podcast for all listening. This will include a spoiler for all published books in the Song of Ice and Fire series, all episodes of Game of Thrones, but are we in agreement that we'll avoid spoiler chapters from The Winds of Winter?
Sounds good.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Because I haven't read them. Anyway.
Same.
Okay, great.
We're probably not likely to read them until 2025, so...
Okay, well, welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave. This would be Wolfcast edition, as we attempt to review the Season 6 premiere of Game of Thrones. My name is Glen. I am Dagos Redmers from the podcast Ice and Fire forums, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Matthieu.
Hi, Barrick on the forums. Occasionally, I'm part of the VOK recordings, so...
And Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire, Dark Sister 24 on the forums.
And finally, David.
Hi, I'm David, ChurchofStarryWisdom on forums.
So I believe that, David, this is your first VOK, is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
No, that's
Welcome,
great.
then.
Welcome to you. So just a few questions that we have to hosts. So it's a growing family that we have of new hosts. So some questions like, how did you get into the series? How did you get into this podcast? And you could rank the series of books based on which is your favourite and which is your least favourite.
I don't know if I can rank the series or the books. I don't know. The books, it's all kind of... I like to look at it as one, like, total experience, and it, like, builds. And to pick out one part is better than another kind of violates the spirit of it. I got into the books in the series. Like, I watched the first 2 series, hated it, kind of like... People kept telling me it was good, so I'd keep watching. And then I decided to go back and... read the books because people told me the books were better, and then I actually ended up liking them and then consuming everything I could related to it after that, including like podcasts of Ice and Fire, a bunch of other different podcasts, Vassals of Kingsgrave, and then here I am.
Oh, that's great. So have you done rereads of the books, or have you read the books a lot?
I've done 3 rereads, one of them being the Feast Dance reread.
And was that a different experience for you when you did that?
It was pretty, like, I don't know, it's a similar experience, but it makes more sense in some ways too. I kind of wish that it would get released entirely in that way, at least in like audiobook format or whatnot. I understand why they can't do it in the physical book format, but, you know.
I always wonder why they can't do it as a Kindle, because surely they can do that at least.
Yeah, definitely, something like that.
Or as an ebook, something like that. But one thing that I was hoping that we would have information for at this stage, so we've got sort of like more time on our hands compared to the Dragoncast, who did theirs instantly. So I was hoping we would have some information on viewing figures and how many people watched the first episode on HBO, and maybe some information on like Sky Atlantic. But it looks like that's not released yet. But some of the reports that I've seen so far, it seems like they're predicting it's going to be the best launcher for Sky, Foxtel in Australia, and HBO. So that's positive, very positive looking.
Isn't that sort of... I mean, I seem to have heard that by now the numbers are pretty much irrelevant because HBO considers the show a hit anyway. I mean, regardless of... I mean, they are talking 6 million viewers and upwards. So it's for them, it's even if it doesn't like make much more than what they did last year at the premiere, I think they would probably consider it a success anyway, because people, even if they pirate it, at some point they're gonna either buy the DVDs or they're gonna, subscribe to HBO or something like that eventually. I mean, it's I don't know. It seems like they might not necessarily care at this point how many viewers they get on the first viewing, right?
Well, I guess the average audience for the episodes, so across the entire series, so from season 1 to season 5, it has been 6.6 million, so maybe that's where the 6 million figure came from. But I know that I think last week they announced that they've already renewed for season 7, so I guess in a way it is irrelevant what the figures were for this season, because they were going to do season 7 anyway, but things could change if it, I don't know, flocked and had like 1 million people watching.
I can't help but wonder from the stats how many people watching it on like Sky, watching it on HBO, is them robbing their own viewership from the world of like piracy, whatever, instead.
Oh, you mean, David, how many people are, I guess, watching online or streaming it like, online?
Yeah, how many people are watching it through legitimate means now as opposed to illicit means before?
Well, I guess it's so across the board. So from, I guess, across the entire world. So Australia, UK, and US. So the figures are all going up. So I guess you had a lot more people downloaded it illegally before, but now are starting to watch it legally, perhaps.
I can say I'm one of those people.
So you started off.
Yeah.
How is it you watch it, Claire? Is it through Sky Atlantic?
Yeah, now I watch it through Sky Atlantic. But before, I think the show was like in season 3. I kind of binge watched season 1 and 2 like a website, and then I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is worth it. So yeah.
So did you stay up to 3 a.m. in the morning last night today?
It was
to
2.
Watch it? Yeah,
it was 2 a.m.
At 2. It started
Yeah.
at 2, but you would have to stay up until 3 to watch it.
I'm pretty much up at that time anyways, so it wasn't that much of a stretch for me, and plus it was extra incentive, so yeah.
Yeah, I stayed up and watched it at, around 3 o'clock or something because I'm in I think, it's different times for continental and for UK time, right? So I would imagine. So that's at least it's how I managed to see it. So
how is it you watch it, Matthieu? Is it some sort of TV network where you live?
I watch it online, but I sometimes watch scenes that are that people put on YouTube or something, and then that's usually how when I don't manage to watch the episode, that's how I catch up. Usually I try to watch all the individual scenes like in the order that they are in the episode or something.
That is something I did want to talk about. So how much did you guys know about the show before it even started? So did you read about spoiler news reports or casting decisions online?
I had seen a YouTube video about some leaked photos from some of the stills from some of the scenes. So a couple of big points in the episode I had kind of already known about, but I wasn't sure whether to believe it or not until it happened. So yeah.
I know I seen a report today, and it was on Facebook about episode 9, and that's got a really expensive battle scene. Like it's supposedly the most expensive episode. So that's, I guess, the only thing I've read so far in advance of the show for this season.
Yeah, I mean, they sort of tease it in the trailer a lot, the big battle that they're going to have this season. So I think it's an episode 9 kind of thing, right?
I pretty much just picked up things from History of Westeros' preview and then VOK's preview of it. And I honestly have to confess, I didn't even watch last season, but this season just seems like it'll be ridiculous. So I kind of wanted to come back and witness the spectacle.
Well, don't you think, David, that you'll go back to season 5 then to catch up on that? No,
I don't know if I really need to. I listen to all the VOKs and all the other podcasts about it, so I feel like I have a good enough grip of what happened that I don't really need to per se.
No, that's understandable.
I mean, when you watch this stuff on YouTube, you always watch it in bits, so you can always watch, bits individual scenes probably from season 5 on YouTube, and at any point, that's still possible. Even though I prefer to watch them on DVD because I did the entire season 1 through 5 rewatch for the last 25 days. So I've watched the entire show from the beginning to where it is now, to sort of, because I've never done that before. So I like to own the DVDs and rewatch things that I really particularly enjoyed.
I think there was a famous comedian that did a marathon, straight from episode 1 all through to the end, and watched it consistently until it was over. But I can't remember who it was. And
yeah,
it took 80 hours, I think, to watch all of the episodes. Oh no, it couldn't be 50 hours to watch all of the episodes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, if you watch 2 a day, you're pretty much through in 25 days, so that's fine.
Yeah.
That makes me so tired just to think about it.
Oh no,
and,
it's actually it's quite fast. It goes by quite fast because the episodes are only 15 minutes long, so it's like you're watching one film basically, right? So
that is true. I did feel like I had been watching the episode this morning, and I felt like only 2 minutes had gone by, and then it was the end. So.
Plus, you have like the intro, which is like 3 minutes. So once you skip that, you don't have as much to go until the episode is over. But Claire, did you watch any interviews or cast interviews in the lead up to the show?
I tend not to, mainly because I don't know what it is, but I just get annoyed because I just get the feeling that as somebody who's kind of read the books and watched the show, like I know, not that I know more than what I guess show viewers would know, but like in my head, there's a certain way things are supposed to be, and then there's the show. So when I watch interviews, it's kind of like, I know they're kind of doing it for the show viewers. So a lot of things they'll say like, this kind of whole big media frenzy of, will Jon Snow be resurrected? And like, I just knew all the cast members would just kind of be like trying not to say anything. And I was just kind of like, I don't need to watch that.
Yeah, I guess the cast and crew got pretty tired of that too, answering the same question over and over again.
Yeah.
And what about you, David? Do you like to watch any interviews or like late night shows where it has the cast?
If I end up coming across it, I don't mind, but I don't really seek it out at all. I generally just kind of view it as all clickbait journalism and I don't know, there's no point. There's no real new information they add, I find.
Well, I did watch the Ellen interview where she interviewed Emilia Clarke, and it was a quick 15-minute interview, I think, but at the end they were playing this game that I had never heard of called Heads Up. Have any of you heard of that? It's this app where you download it, and it's
Yeah, I think it's an actual
sort of like charades.
Invention of Ellen's, yeah.
Oh, it's an invention of Ellen's?
Well, it's kind of like, I think it started on her show as a thing that she kind of did with her guests, and then like they created an app for it, so yeah.
Because I felt like I was living under a rock because I have never heard of that game before. Then I looked it up on my iPad and realised, I was maybe thinking of downloading it, but then I realised it was one of those games you have to purchase. So I changed my mind about that.
What is it exactly?
So it's sort of like a charade game. So you click on it, it comes up with a description of someone. So it might say like a Mexican woman, and you have to act out as a Mexican woman, and like the other person has to guess what you are.
It's
and then
kind of like going. It's kind of like charades, but kind of like dumbed down to like a game like when on your phone that you can play with people. So, and it's kind of like the whole
out.
Yeah, and the whole heads up thing is kind of like if you get it right, then you kind of like tilt your screen up and stuff like that. It's like sticking like a piece of paper on somebody's head and writing like who they are, and then that person has to guess who they are.
And so Ellen did like a Game of Thrones version of this, or?
Well, it was Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones. She played the game with Ellen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I watched actually a lot of interviews for the seasons before the show starts, because I just like the actors trying to explain their characters in the way they see them, and that's always interesting to me. Like, how does the actor view the character instead of me imposing my view of the characters from the books on the show that is more and more deviating from the books, right?
And do you have a favourite interview, Matthieu?
Oh, I wouldn't be able to pick out one. A specific one. I would just say that the actor I enjoy most talking about his character is Liam Cunningham, who plays Davos Seaworth. So that's always very enjoyable because he has a very carefree attitude in how he talks about everything, and he's actually he seems very engaged in the story and the characters, and that's always fun.
Who seemed most educated about like what happens in the books, kind of thing, out of any of the actors you saw?
I would say from the actors that I've seen,
Jon Snow. Kit Harington is the most educated.
Yeah, Kit Harington has read the books as well, right? I mean, there's also Aidan Gillen who has read the books, but he's less fond of them. So yeah. I think that he's not really like he probably doesn't really get the hype behind the books and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, I feel like Kit Harington seems most aware, and he had to actually dial it back for a couple of seasons because he had read ahead in the books. So he had to play Jon Snow in a different way for seasons 2 and 3, I think. Because season 4, he was starting to get into Lord Commander mode, basically, and that's basically where he was at once he'd finished the books. But by that time, they hadn't filmed that stuff yet, so he had to basically find a different headspace for Jon Snow.
I just always think that's an excuse from actors when they say, I don't want to read ahead because I don't want to find out too much about my character. It always feels like an excuse not to read the books.
Yeah, but with these books, they're really big books, so I can understand if they don't necessarily want to read all of that, just to play the characters. I'm sure they are very interested in the way that the scripts portray the characters, so it's probably provides enough material for them to work with.
Yeah, I remember watching a Sky kind of special on Game of Thrones, and I remember they had like a couple of the cast members in a room, and they had asked them if any of them read the books, and I remember who plays Tywin Lannister was like, "Oh no, have you seen them? They're like encyclopedias." And then I think Rosie Leslie, who played Ygritte, was like, "Oh yeah, I've read them all." And I just remember looking at John Doster's face, and he was like, "Oh wow, not reading that."
Yeah.
Well, they don't need to read the books. There's no requirement for them to.
No.
I know that fans expect them to read the books, but I guess I admire Lena Headey more because she's like, no, I'm not reading them, and she's just saying, she's not pretending that she will read them, or she's not pretending to eventually read them. She's just like, I'm not reading them, I don't have the time, or I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a good approach to take, sort of to say, well, yeah, this is probably not for me because, whatever the reason is, but still she enjoys working on the character, right?
That's right, she does do a marvellous job, and in this episode in particular, she was really great in acting when she found out that Marcella had died.
Mm-hmm.
One more thing to talk about before we get into discussion on the episode in question, so the season 6 premiere. So we have the podcast awards coming up. So have you all placed your nominations for that?
Sadly, I haven't at the moment. So
no, that's okay. You still have up until April the 30th to make some nominations. Well, Vassals of Kingsgrave, we've registered, and we're hoping to get a nomination for film and TV, and then also nominate a podcast of Ice and Fire for People's Choice and Best Entertainment. But if you don't want to vote for us, then it's still a good chance to nominate, all the podcasts that you love. So there's a great number of categories like politics, education, entertainment, film and TV, and I must have like 100 podcasts that I listen to regularly and, sporadically, so I'm sure there's plenty of categories that you can nominate. But with this episode, I think we can start with lemoncake ratings and how you felt about the episode. So starting with Claire, how did you feel?
It kind of changed for me, but I would, purely on the ending alone, I would give it like 4 lemon cakes.
And what was it about the ending that you loved so much?
It freaked me out so much that I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and it was just so ominous. And that's what I want when I watch a TV show, or when I watch Game of Thrones, or when I read, one of the books. I want to kind of be moved or like disturbed or something like that. So yeah, I enjoyed that.
That did remind me of, have you ever watched Let the Right One In?
Yeah.
That reminded me so much of that scene where it was a flash to Oscar and Ellie, and you see her for a split second of what she really looks like. But David, how about you when you first watched the episode?
Probably about a 2.5. I mean, it's one of those building episodes where they're cranking everything slowly into place for the later cascade sort of thing. And they didn't really do anything particularly egregious to bring it down outside maybe Dorne. But that was mostly like the egregiousness of last season. Yeah, I don't know. I tend to be fairly conservative with my lemon cake ratings, though.
Well, what has been your favourite episode, or what episodes have got like a 5 or close to a 5?
Pretty much none. Like I said, I'm really
None.
conservative with my lemon cake ratings, and like I started out hate watching the show and kind of watching it as trash. Like honestly, at best sometimes it reminds me of an episode of Xena or like the old TV show.
Oh,
At
come on.
worst, it's
The effects are much better than in Xena.
I don't know, some of the fight scenes, like it gets pretty bad.
Okay.
No, I can agree with that. There have been some really bad fight scenes, especially in Dorne. But Matthieu, finally yourself.
So I gave it 4.5 on the forums. I took half a lemon cake away because of the Dorne's subplot, which I recognize is, the least successful aspect of the show. But it seems to me like they reached a point with this episode, at least, where they could say, well, we move away from that for a while now. We've sort of killed off the Dorne plot, so to speak. So that's to me, it's fine if they don't come back to it until much later when it's absolutely necessary. So like the rest of it, I actually enjoyed quite a lot. I mean, there are obviously, people already nitpicking details like where did the dogs go in the Sansa scene, or why, how come that, Misa is a master is written in plain English and not in, old Giscari or whatever. And those kinds of things I generally don't mind. These kinds of details don't particularly bother me. So I give it 4.5 because I enjoyed the ending so much. And because obviously the main focus of the show has sort of shifted. I think the pacing is a bit different from previous years. It seemed a bit faster than usual, because usually they don't get into the meat of things until a couple of episodes in. But here they sort of started addressing the immediate issue, like with John and everything, right away. So I enjoyed it a lot. So that's why I gave it 4.5.
No, that's great. And you were saying that so when you rated the episode on the forums, what was the feeling on the forums? Because I haven't read that thread yet.
Varied opinions, I think. Lots of different opinions, I guess. Most people seem to say probably it's between 3.5, 3 and 4, maybe, something like that. Those ones. Yeah. That
was the average, I guess 3.5.
I guess something like that, right? But I haven't. I mean, in the meantime, I only checked this morning, so I wasn't exactly sure this evening if it was still that way. But from what I saw, lots of people seemed more or less to very. I mean, there were very different opinions on the episode, I might have to say, though. So it's likely that people say it's an okay episode, but probably not the best one of the show so far. That's definitely not what is happening.
It's in line with what I would rate the episode, so 3.5 lemon cakes, I would say. So it's a show that I had to wait a long time for, and watched a lot of shows like Bargain Brits Under the Sun and Queen at 90 Family Reunion in order to stay up until 2 p.m. So it was worth the wait, at least for that. And I did enjoy the setup. I think the opening episodes tend to be my favourite episodes of the seasons. So I think what dragged it down, so it was maybe heading towards the 4, but I think it was the ending that dragged it down to a 3.5, because I just wasn't that impressed with the ending. It's just not much of a shock ending that I was hoping for.
But then again, that's also been a criticism of the show, hasn't it? That people say, well, it's only doing things for shock value. So to me, it felt like it was stepping away from that reputation a bit. That's what I liked about it, I think.
For me, even though to some people, I guess the ending was shocking, especially people who are just exclusively show watchers. I think for me, it wasn't even just the shock of the ending. It was just, I don't know, I just felt emotion from the ending. But I know a lot of people have criticized that ending for, being kind of just Game of Thrones using the shock value again, where in a sense I think it's kind of weird because I think they're not, but yeah.
I think to me it's actually visually much richer than people might give it credit for on the first watch. If you really consider the character that's being that's in the scene, like, and what's happened before. I mean, that to me it felt a very big character building moment, actually, because especially after listening to what David and Dan had to say about the episode and that scene in particular, I felt this was a very rich scene that was, obviously not some big explosion or whatever that changed the story like forever. It was just, to me, it felt like a readjustment of the character, in a way that made sense to me, given what we know and given what has happened. So, and it made her much more sympathetic, I think, in my view. I mean, I legitimately felt sad after the scene was over, because it's basically a character sort of saying, I give up. I felt the ending was particularly strong because it was so low key and basically silent, and you just have the acting and the music, which I find is the best thing to do in that case. So
you can begin at the wall, so it's sort of like a bookend of the wall. So we start with the wall and we end with the wall. So it starts off with John, an image of John lying in the snow, and he's taken to the Maester, who confirms that he's dead. That's when, well, you see Dolores dead, but I didn't recognise the other brothers that were there. Did we know who the characters were?
No, I don't think so. They are random people.
Yeah.
They're probably people who voted for John.
I hate to feed the hype there of like the Dario Benjamin thing, but that one ranger in the back definitely looked like Michael Huisman, who plays Dario.
So he was in two places at once.
It's part of the clone.
He can teleport. Oh, maybe he cloned himself.
I was expecting to see just, I don't know, familiar faces, like faces that I kind of recall from from the beginning of John's journey as a member of the Night's Watch. But when they showed the people, I was like, I do not know who these people are, but okay, it's fine. They're going to help. So
yeah. I think it's a problem in a way that they killed Glen and Pip in the season 4 battle, right? But I think in that episode it made sense, to give characters that you have already seen big things to do, and so in that case it lent it dramatic weight. So I mean, obviously now you don't have these characters around, but you still have Ed, who I like the sentence about we're in a particularly bad situation if Dolores Ed is our last chance, right? It's our last hope. So it's it's just such a good commentary on the character and his cynicism, right? So.
Oh, and David, were you talking about the guy that's really bad at acting, and he's like, who killed him? In the background, and that guy is that who you were talking about?
No,
Dario lookalike.
In the room with Ed and Davos and them in the background, there's just one of the extras who's standing around who kind of looks like he's got the same facial hair, bit of the same facial features. I didn't freeze frame to check that closely, but,
But then I guess the next scene was all the brothers are herded around and they have a meeting. Alistair Horn presents at the meeting, and I was surprised at this. He just point blank says that I killed John, and so did this guy, and Bone Marsh. That's what I meant to say. Bone Marsh killed him too, and were you surprised by that they just said we killed him?
I think it was kind of something that was likely to happen. He was gonna. I mean, he seems like a very righteous person, so he thinks that he absolutely did the right thing, even though it's obviously incompatible with the oaths that they swear. Basically, but he might say, well, in this situation, we didn't really have a choice, so John gave us no choice but to mutineer, because basically he would have destroyed the values of the institution that we serve and undermine all our purpose, basically. And I think in his mind he thinks he's right, and he's trying to rationalize it and sort of legitimize his position by mentioning all the other people, all the other officers there that are also guilty by association. So it's it's trying to sort of convince everyone that what he did was the best choice, right?
My thing is like they were so quick to kind of be like, he was like, oh, I killed him, and they're like, oh, you're a murderer, you're a traitor, and I was like, yes. And then he was like, he explains his like reasons why, and then they're just kind of like, well, oh, he's got a point. Oh, and I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, when none of you at Hardhome, like, do you not see John's reasoning? Like, come on.
He's Donald Trump. He basically gets, he basically makes the same argument as Donald Trump basically when saying, oh, the wildlings, they are, coming through our wall, and our wall has to be huge, and that sort of stupid argument. But still, like, there are lots of people who fall for that kind of deal when they hear, oh yeah, we defend everyone against, murderers and, reavers and rapists and that sort of thing. So yeah, they basically feel like the purpose is being reinvigorated by in some fashion. I guess, yeah. No, but
I almost wish like nothing will happen and John will remain dead, and then like everything can happen, and just like Alistair Thorne will just have his moment of like, damn it, I shouldn't have killed him, like right before he gets killed by a White Walker. Like, just I just almost wish that would happen, just so I could see that and just be like, yep, you did the wrong thing. But yeah,
it would be nice if they kept John completely out of the picture, right? If they didn't bring him back, and how people would have to deal with that state of affairs, right? If there's no one there to save you, how do you deal with it?
I like his sophist logic too. It reminds me of like Balon Greyjoy with his like, I've never once disobeyed any orders.
Oh my gosh.
Commander didn't tell me not to stab him.
Oh, he's like, I've always remained loyal. Okay, if that's your definition of loyalty, okay.
Antona.
Oh gosh.
So Davos joins forces with Dolores Ed and all these other brothers that we've never seen before, and they lock themselves in a room with John's dead body and then keep the door bolted. So when Davos was talking about like you're not the only one that Jon Snow owes their life to or something, was he talking about Melisandre, or was that someone else that he was?
I thought it was the wildlings.
Ah, the wildlings. I just didn't get who he was talking about when he said that.
Yeah.
Where are the wildlings right now?
South
I
of
think
the
they're in
somewhere.
the gift.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere. Somewhere where they can be found rather easily by Dolores Ed, because he has to. They have a limited time frame in which to act. So I guess they can't be too far away.
Somewhere not too far away, that by the time 1-1 gets to the wall, he won't be too tired, and he'll happily wreck everything.
To me, it'll be interesting to see if, because the wildlings, they basically act, they are a group of people when they march together, but at the same time, when they make decisions to be loyal to someone, it's all, individual decisions. So if Tormund has to convince people, how is he going to convince them to fight to help Davos in order to protect Jon's body?
I really don't think they need that much incentive to wreck some Night's Watchmen.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true, actually. Especially these Night's Watchmen. They don't...
Yeah.
Then finally, the episode and the wall storyline ends with Melisandre. So you see her walking in, talking to Davos, then walking out to her own chamber, and you can see that she is weakening, that she's really giving up, like Matthieu said before, and she takes off her clothes, takes off her jewellery, then looks at herself. We see her as the beautiful woman we recognise, then looks at herself again, and she's a haggard old crone that looks like she's 300 years old, and that's how the episode ends. And I think it's one of those moments from the show where you see it happen and you remember something from the books that you had forgotten, because I'm sure that's sort of discussed in the books, what is it called, that she glamours herself?
Yeah, the glamouring.
And how did you feel about the scene, David?
It's nice to see just because it reminds me of first getting her POV in the books, where you actually get to see a little bit of vulnerability from her.
Yeah, I mean, because she's been so sure of herself the entire time. And so, I mean, I guess the incentive on the show for her to doubt herself is that she thought Stannis was the warrior of light, and then in the end, didn't really happen that way on the show. So, yeah. And then she also says when she comes to talk to Davos that that she saw Jon fighting in Winterfell. And so Davos seems to imply that, the visions don't seem to line up with what's actually happened, and so that's when she starts doubting herself.
I feel like seeing Jon dead, that was I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, being wrong with Stannis was a blow enough, but then she's like, oh damn it, even in my mind a lesser kind of vision that I saw, that's even wrong. So she just completely is like, she just gives up. She's like, I can't even be bothered to put on my face anymore. So
what was with the vial of liquid, though, in that scene? Like, are they trying to imply that she's, poisoning herself, or...?
No, that's, I think, harkens back to the scene where we saw her without a necklace in Season 4, when she took a bath with Selyse in the room, basically. Because she asked her to put some kind of potions into the bath as well. So I guess the glamour seems to be a combination of, her necklace, the ruby, and the... liquids that she has in these vials and bottles and that sort of thing. So she probably applies them in order to make herself look much younger than she actually is.
Nice cover. I thought they were just playing with new rules with this season because they wanted to.
Speaking of Stannis, do we all take this as confirmation that he's dead? The offhand comment that Roose Bolton said to Ramsay?
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that it was just so quick, a brief scene, just someone talking in the background that he's dead and that's it, that we didn't see, the image of him being killed by Brienne.
Yeah.
But I think it was sort of to save, at least, the way that it played out on the show, lots of bad things happened in that episode for Stannis. So I think they didn't want to needlessly pile on by, showing his dead, mutilated body after Brienne gives him the death blow. And so what I feel like is they wanted to show, to at least let us know that he died, but they didn't want to needlessly sort of push our buttons with that thing. I guess they just wanted to let him go out with dignity when he said, do your duty and that sort of thing. So that's what his character's about.
I was talking about this on the last Wolfcast, so from last year, and it was just a conversation about if the decision was based on, so to kill Stannis, if it was based on the actor or not, or if it was based on the storyline. So I don't think it's a coincidence that right now Stephen Delane is in the tunnel sabotage at the same time as when Game of Thrones comes out. So just a question of whether you think it was the actor's decision to leave the show, or if it was based on the writer's decision to kill the character.
I heard somewhere that he was actually quite happy to leave. I don't think he kind of got the hype, so to say. So yeah.
I kind of feel like it was the writers just wanting to get rid of him because they've never really liked him that much, it seems.
Yeah, Stannis doesn't... to me, the idea of the Game of Thrones is basically well represented by a character like Stannis. So, if you want to say that it actually doesn't matter, vying for this castle or this throne or whatever, in the grand scheme of things, the most important thing is beyond the wall. That and that's why I guess killing Stannis sends a powerful message, sort of to say that this actually is senseless. They shouldn't be devoting their efforts to doing this. They should be fighting the war against the others. But yeah, I think it was probably a writer's decision more than anything, because it felt probably appropriate to sort of say, well, the Baratheons are going to be gone by the end of season 5. So that means that we eliminated one whole contender for the throne, because the throne in the end actually doesn't really matter. And vying for it gets you this, essentially, is what that seemed to imply, I guess.
Trying to avoid spoilers as well, do we think that's... So George R.R. Martin did a press release where he said one of the characters is dead on the show, but not in his books. Do we think that's Stannis, or could it be someone else?
Hopefully
Catelyn
Dorne.
as well. Oh yeah, that's right, Dorne, and met his demise tonight, and so did his son, so does Dario Hota, Claire and David. So you're new to Wolfcast and the podcasts in general. So how are you feeling about? Well, David, you didn't really watch season 5, but Claire, how do you feel about the Dorne scenes? So they seem to be like really heavily criticised and like the least favourite scenes across the people that watch the show, it seems.
In season 5, I did not mind the Dorne scenes. I just really didn't like the writing for the Dorne scenes. It was just completely just wrong. And so I was wondering what they would do this season to kind of fix it. And yeah, I'm not impressed. But I mean, I think for me, it comes down to I kind of hold the books and the shows as like alternate universes. They do not cross in any way. They're two completely different things. So I don't mind because it doesn't kind of affect me in a way, but it's still just like, I do just kind of roll my eyes whenever, on the screen we switch to Dorne.
So you enjoy the scenery and the filming, but just not the writing and what actually happens. Yeah.
I kind of think they realized they did a bad job with the writing, and now they're just liquidating everyone there. Which is everything. It wouldn't surprise me if in the next few episodes the Sand Snakes were just killed off too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's always been the problem was that the characters that they introduced in Dorne, except for Oberyn and Ilaria in season 4, I would say that apart from that, the characters in Dorne don't seem particularly singular or interesting, or nuanced in any way. It seems like they're very broad characters and, conform to lots of, tropes that you see in that kind of, it seems like it's almost like Arabian Night kind of fiction.
With two of the Sand Snakes in King's Landing now, though, what do you guys figure will happen with them? I kind of expect they might die, but I don't know.
Robert Strong is going to squish them. It's going to smush their heads together, and that's it. End of story.
I feel like I'm not even bothered at this moment. Just if they just didn't show them at all, I wouldn't even pick up on it.
Yeah, I mean they could not show them until the end of the show, and people wouldn't miss them because they're so lower level characters at the moment. It doesn't really register.
How did they get there anyways, though? Did they just stow away on the boat for the whole trip, or like...
They followed them probably on their own ship or something like that, right? I mean, that's the only explanation that you can find. Because they were on the pier when they left.
I read somewhere that Gendry gave them a ride.
I figured they might just be really fast swimmers or something.
So he got lost. I mean, that was told him to row until King's Landing, right? And so he probably got lost on the way and went to Dorne by mistake.
Just completely skipped that. Just went, whoop, I'm in the wrong place.
Moving on to Sansa and Theon. So this scene reminded me so much of the scene from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe when the kids are like surfing on that ice block and like getting away from the wolves. So you have Sansa and Theon, and they're running through a river to escape, of course, the hounds from Ramsay. And then the question that sprung to my mind is like, how did they survive that massive jump from the tower from last season?
Jumped into soft snow, probably, right?
Snow cushion.
Well, that's how they explain it in the book, isn't it? That they jump on like a massive snow landing and that saved the fall. But still, from the angle that they jumped from the show, it seems like you would not survive that with your limbs intact.
It's because the river is just a short crawl from the walls of Winterfell. So they get to the river and then they cross. The cold river like brings down the swelling in their broken legs so they can still wobble.
No, it's probably because they they didn't anticipate. I mean, they probably wanted to leave it up to the imagination, like, and how they survived. It doesn't really. I mean, does it really matter that much? I mean, I didn't think they would. I mean, if I watched the season finale of last year, I wouldn't have thought that they died.
But that's what they wanted you to think happened. That's the magic of television. So they set these. They make these setups so to make you think that maybe they are dead.
Yeah.
But of course we know otherwise.
Yeah, but even then I wouldn't have thought that from the way that they shot it. I didn't think that they would have died, essentially. That's the thing. From the way that they showed it, they when they were looking at each other and sort of jumping off the Winterfell walls, it didn't really feel to me that this was sort of the end of their storyline, because then they would have showed it.
No, because the swelling.
But then
there's no real danger.
But then they didn't show Stannis either.
Oh, that's true.
What happened to him?
Yeah, that's true.
And I was also thinking that Sansa didn't try very hard. I mean, Theon rushed away to sacrifice himself, and then she just stayed there and didn't do a thing.
Oh, because he's
pointless. Just wasted Theon's sacrifice. Like, she didn't she didn't even try to crawl or anything. She was just there oh, okay, you're sacrificing yourself. Okay.
Because she's not Sansa yet. She's still in Jane Poole mode. Eventually she might become Sansa again. But for now, she's still in Flea.
I don't think actually that she's in Jane Poole mode, because essentially, the last episode of season 5 was her just sort of maneuvering her way, out of her own predicament, basically, and
But
then
she still relies on Theon to save her in the end, doesn't she?
No, I mean they jumped off together. Basically, I always saw it as a decision that they made, both as as equals, and it's most important because they are both responsible in some ways for the hardships of the Stark family. So to me that was always very powerful that they brought them together in that manner. But I never got the impression, as many people did, that Sansa was sort of being without agency. It's just that the situation she found herself in was probably not the easiest one to get out of in her situation, because if you're trapped in with the Boltons and you can't leave, then the only thing that you can try to do is trying to escape. That means that you have to sort of convince someone like Theon to help you in some fashion, and she tried to do that throughout season 5. But to me, it's the idea that somehow she gets robbed of her agency. It's a bit. I mean, I can see how someone might think that, but at the same time, there's also evidence to the contrary to that, in my opinion.
I definitely kind of viewed it on the other aspect of. I kind of felt like it was them breaking her character and just kind of doing things that she can't really come back from per se. Somewhat in the same way that I feel like they're doing with Jaime this season a bit, violating the spirit of where his character's going in the books. But that's fine, because the show is the show and the books are the books. I don't even think that the word character assassination to me doesn't really mean anything, because as long as I'm interested in what you're doing, then it doesn't matter what the original source material says. To me, that's not important. What's important is that I'm interested in what you're showing to me. So that's fair. I just kind of feel like this show story doesn't have the same kind of depth or gravitas as the book story, which it's a show.
It can't. It has 10 hours of television. The books have 1,000 pages of written material, so that's a bit of a difference.
Definitely, but there are ways to do it better, personally, I think. Don't ask me to write one, because I'm not a writer, though.
No, we won't.
I think this was a big prediction from last year. Everyone must have predicted this, or I must have heard it on a lot of podcasts and articles, but people predicted that Sansa and Theon would team up with Podrick and Brienne, and it did happen first episode. They didn't waste their time on that one.
What else could you really have Brienne do, though?
Well, I was just thinking that maybe they could string it out a bit until they met Brienne, but I guess they must have other things planned for the characters and what they'll do this storyline, so it was important to do it straight away.
Brotherhood without Banners is back as well, right? So we might get that particular character that everyone's been waiting for, which is probably why they held off on this season until they probably introduced the Brotherhood again, because it fits together with what John's story is undergoing, I guess.
Where did the dogs go?
Scared off during the fighting, maybe?
It really, like, I remember just kind of like pausing my TV and being like, okay, they just disappeared. Cool. Those are great hounds, great training. Well done, Ramsay.
Or maybe Brienne murdered them off screen. I don't know.
She was struggling on screen. I don't know where she would have gotten the time.
She killed one hound before on the show, so.
I wasn't thinking about the dogs. I was just thinking when we get to Daenerys' storyline, what happened to Drogon, sorry.
Oh, he didn't go with her, did he? He was just
there
lazy he was on the hill somewhere, lying on the ground like sleeping and stuff, and she was wandering off because she wanted to get back to Marine, and then the Thraki show up.
Just waiting for a pivotal CGI budget appearance to.
Yeah,
it's gonna be good.
Like last season, she stepped away from like 20 steps, and suddenly she got surrounded by the Khalasars, the way it was filmed. But that's why I was thinking that Drogon was just like lying on rock, like so far away.
I just had one question about those Boltons. Are those the 20 good men that Ramsay had, or whatever, or is that like just some other?
No, but I think that I think what they actually did last year with those 20 good men is basically, standard guerrilla tactic where you don't actually need higher numbers to do a lot of damage if you can inflict damage in a way that's underhanded and basically have the surprise element, right? You can basically try to attack their supply lines and that sort of thing, and try to create confusion. And that's, I don't think that this is especially. I don't think it's that outlandish to think that a small group of people can still do a lot of damage.
No, I was just trying to figure out like a.
It's because I've seen it everywhere. Like people say, "Oh, well, this is obviously 20 of House Goodman or something like that." It's become sort of a meme in and of itself, I guess.
Yeah.
That is something that I did want to talk about, so we might as well talk about the small scene between Ramsay and Roose Bolton. So that was before the Theon and Sansa scene, and the only time we've seen them in the episode. So that was where Roose and Ramsay, so you've got the death of Miranda, and Ramsay tells a story about when he met her when he was 11 years old. Then we have Roose and Ramsay, and there's a threat from Roose that Fat Walda might be carrying a son for me. But did any of you know that Jon Snow, so when originally they were casting for Jon Snow, so it was like a final lineup between Ewan Ryan and Kit Harington, and eventually it went to Kit Harington.
Yeah, I heard about that.
I can't remember where I read it or where I heard about it, but maybe it was in the Inside Game of Thrones HBO book, but I can't remember where I read that.
I wish that had happened now. Jon Snow would be so creepy.
Yeah. I mean, but to be honest, I think Kit Harington looks much more like Sean Bean than Ewan Ryan.
Definitely.
So probably the better choice was made visually.
I'm also so glad, because if that had happened, if he was cast as Jon Snow, then he would have left Misfits much earlier, and he was bad enough.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Oh, it just wasn't the same once he left that show.
Yeah.
That show was always kind of a train wreck, but it was a really fun train wreck.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Roose is not. I mean, he's probably not going to survive the season if we know what Ramsay does. I mean, he's not above killing people of his own family, right? So why would Roose be special? Ramsay has to probably devise some kind of scheme to murder his own father, and before he gets delegitimized or anything like that, right?
Maybe that's who's burning on the cross we see in the trailer.
Ooh.
Yeah. If he puts Fat Walda and Roose Bolton on one of the on the crosses, that would actually be, kind of. I mean, in the books, Ramsey is a cartoon, isn't he? I mean, he's a cartoon villain in the books, right? I mean, he's not funny like a cartoon villain. He's just disgusting in a way that he's one-dimensionally evil. And on the show, I mean, they try to make him more interesting than he is in the books. And at least with the eulogy that he gives to his dead girlfriend or whatever. I mean, that's at least something that makes him a bit more, I guess. It gives him a bit more depth than he would otherwise have, because in the books he really is just like angry and violent, and that's it.
Does that count as the woman in a refrigerator trope where they kill off Miranda to give Ramsey gravitas on his journey clawing his way to the Iron Throne or whatever? Or
and as if he was ever gonna get to the Iron Throne, he messes up too much. No, I guess it's just because it sort of showcases that, why he might care for her in some fashion, because they share this sick thing that they have, hunting people and inflicting pain and that sort of thing. He doesn't really give her much more thought than that, because at the end of the day, he just considers her like a big sack of meat that he's going to feed to his dogs afterwards. So it's not really any real affection. It's more or less just showcasing how truly careless he actually is about other people.
I always kind of saw that as this realistic pragmatism that's a good thing in a leader, where he's right, meat is meat, and they're going to be starving soon in Winterfell, so
the dogs are going to feast on him very soon, I hope. So let's cross our fingers for that one. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But so what's Roose gonna do against the Lannisters? Because if I remember, last year he said, they're not the Lannisters are not going to support you. They're not going to send an army to help us hold the North, basically. And I think it's actually at least they stuck to the way that they set up the thing with Peter Baelish last year, because it actually was treason what they did, given that Cersei wants Sansa dead. So now they have to sort of deal with the fallout of that.
I don't know if they do, though. It seems like an empty threat, because it is like Kemper says in the books, he's so far away up north, what to do, and the Lannisters are something to deal with.
Yeah, to me it's always interesting to see what his end game is, if he even has an end game. Does Roose just want to hold on to the position that he has now, or is there something else that we don't know yet? And how far is that informed by what we know from the books? There is this hold-on theory that I hear about, where he's actually a skin-changing immortal vampire or whatever.
I've heard that.
Yeah, so I don't even know if he's with us, because it seems from everything that we hear about the Boltons, they seem kind of inhuman to some extent. At least when they talk about the eyes and that sort of thing, it's really creepy. I don't know if they're going to change this, if Roose is going to die pretty soon or not, or if we'll have to. I guess we'll have to see. But I would just be interested to see if it ends up being differently from what's in the books in this regard. But yeah, I guess we should we move over to Dany and to Essos in general?
It was very similar to the scene in, I think it was season 3, where, that typical movie scene where people are talking in the background in a foreign language, and then the main character is just walking along, pretending like they don't know what they're saying, but then she reveals that I actually can understand you and what you're talking about. It's like they repeated themselves with that scene again that they did in season 3.
Yeah, except that this time she didn't burn anyone to ashes, right? So
that's right. She didn't have the dragon to do that this time.
Mm-hmm. She did have her, I call it her little Daenerys shtick, this thing where she tells people all her titles and she just assumes people will care. She was just going on, and I was like, they're not gonna care. Just go ahead and say that you're Khal Drogo's widow. That's gonna have to give you more leverage. She's just going on about sunburn, and I was like, this literally means nothing to them. Why do you do this all the time?
Well, that surprised me, Claire, because I always thought that people knew about her all over the world, and people had told stories to each other, and she was, that they would see her and recognize her. but they seem to not know who she is or have any idea of who she is.
I don't know why she thought them recognizing her would be a good thing, though.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was kind of, for me, I was kind of happy that they didn't. Like, it's like a dose of like reality to her, because I think it just comes from my own kind of Danny hate. But like, it was just like when he was like, "You're queen of nothing," I was like, "Yes, you're queen of nothing." Like, it was just such a good moment for me.
Yeah, and he seems like, compared to, I mean, given that he's a Dothraki who, are not above raping women as part of, the way of doing war in general. It's like, I mean, at least he had the, I guess the cultural know-how to sort of show respect to the customs of his people, I would say, to sort of take her to the Dosh Kalin, which is what I always thought was going to happen in book 6 anyway. I mean, even though, I mean, it's different in the book, because in the book she is with Drogon, isn't she? Like when she meets the Dothraki, so they might actually not take her to Vice Dothrak in the book, because they wouldn't have any way of making her, right? But here she is not with Drogon. I
think in the book it's kind of referenced that Drogon's he's kind of eaten himself into like sleep, like he's just killed a whole bunch of like sheep and like rams, and he's just kind of resting and like won't allow her to get back onto him for him to fly away. So I guess that's why she kind of wanders off in the book, and I guess they kind of alluded to that in the show, that she kind of wanders off like, well, if Drogon's not gonna get me there, then I'll try and do it myself, which I guess makes sense as to why Drogon isn't there.
Oh yeah,
but I did find that hilarious too when she was listing off all the titles, and it's like become a long running joke within like the book series and the TV show now, that she always introduces herself with like 10 titles. Like, imagine if she had that on an identity card. Like,
oh my god!
Oh no! Oh my god! It even has a watermark.
It's like given names.
And David, how do you feel about Daenerys as a character?
I'm not that overly invested in her as a character, especially on the show. I'm more interested in the books, just as like a force of nature. In the books, I kind of suspect that she'll be taking the Khalasar to Vaes Dothrak and not vice versa. I did really appreciate, though, this year in the show how like the Dothraki seem to have benefited a lot from an increased budget, and like the Khalasar was
yeah, no longer just 50 people.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. That's right, that it used to be like 100 people maybe wandering around, sort of like the Night's Watch. So they've shifted the budget, so now they've shifted that to the Khalasar compared to the Night's Watch, and it's the Night's Watch that has like 10 people.
Yeah. But they had an attack on the wall to justify that.
That's pretty realistic to the books too. The Night's Watch does have only like 10 people.
Yeah. I found the Dothraki's attempt to be funny it was funny, but at the same time it was so cringe-worthy. Like, it was just
very cliche.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked it in the sense because it was commenting on, the chauvinism of the Dothraki, actually. It's like this idea that they sort of, because they are men, they basically can behave however they want towards the women and not only in their own culture, but also to the women that they take in as slaves, right? And obviously it's not framed in a way that makes them look nice in any way,
Yeah, I found it also kind of gave them a way to kind of give you a little bit of backstory on Khal Moro, when the guys were like, oh, but it's like seeing a naked woman as great as the time when you took a city and enslaved her people and killing a Khal. So I think it kind of gave you a little backstory into Khal Moro by saying, oh, you've done all these things, but in a humorous way.
So what do we think of him actually as a character? Do we think, I think he has potential as a character.
As a love interest, maybe?
No. There's a love interest. No, not like that. I'm just saying, like, he seems actually pretty, subdued as far as Dothraki go. Like, if you compare him to Khal Drogo, they're not. It's just not just a copy paste of the same character, I would say. he seems much more reasonable, I would say. Like Khal Drogo was just like completely like id and big muscular force and that sort of thing. And this guy seems to be at least a bit more reasonable.
I feel like in that scene alone, like he said more words than Khal Drogo ever did in a season.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll flesh him out, though? I kind of just figured he was a cab driver to get her to Vassal Thrak.
Yeah, probably.
We should see. I mean, maybe. I mean, we don't know how Dany's gonna get out of this, but if she's going to impress the Dothraki, either she's going to have to get rid of the Khal, or she's going to, have him bend to her will, so to speak.
What did we all think of the copycats of Eerie and Jeekwe? The ones that are going, "It is known," or is that just a custom throughout the Dothraki that everyone does that?
Oh, it's like saying like they stole the catchphrase.
Exactly.
I thought it was just a nice reference back.
Yeah.
I love the wives in the background, just like, she's a witch. Like, nobody's taking my place. She's a witch. Yeah.
If you're blue eyes, you're a witch. So, but yeah. So generally, I think I liked the story of Shodani more than her book story, because the stuff in Marine just gets so needlessly complicated. I just lost interest at some point. I'm afraid. But on the show, at least they condensed it enough to where it was still compelling to watch, I would say. I didn't want to change the channels or anything like that when I was watching it. So
I guess that I think it's the acting of Emilia Clarke. She just commands so much stage presence. I think that's what's so compelling about the storyline, her acting for it, because the writing can be a bit sketchy sometimes, but just like, she's such a force on screen. That's what I like most about the TV show compared to the books.
She is really fun to watch. I don't know if there's that much depth there, but she's fun to watch.
I think she has good moments of depth. I mean, when she locked the dragons in the crypt and that sort of thing, that was a very strong acting moment. And generally, I think whenever she speaks Valyrian or Dothraki, like it's. I mean, there's something about speaking in a different language that the watchers don't necessarily know how to speak, that actually makes it much more interesting to watch. So it's actually I'm much more optimistic about the Dany plot in this season than I was, for example, in season 2, where season 2 was fine until episode, let's say, 5 or 6, and then it sort of went nowhere.
I'm not a big fan of, I don't know, for me, it's not Emilia Clarke that kind of excites me in the Dany scenes. It's the people around her that I guess she kind of bounces off of, which for me just kind of makes it better. For some reason, I find myself liking the Dany that we had at the beginning of Game of Thrones, and even when she was with Khal Drogo, I felt like she was a lot stronger then, because I guess in a sense she kind of had a purpose, and she was definitely like, yep, I'm going to do this. We're going to go across the sea, and we're going to take back my home. And then it's just kind of, for me, it's just kind of waned all the way down to season 6 now, where it's just kind of like I'm just ready for her to hop on a boat.
You don't feel that draw of like the compulsion of like righteous indignance though, whenever she's railing against something or anything?
Oh, like I think the last time I felt that was for me like the best scene ever, when this was back when she was I think she was she outside Karth, or it was Marine, when she did the whole kind of like Dracarys, like for him to like burn the guy. For me, that was like a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, like yes, I felt it. But then I feel like she hasn't had a scene like that since then. Like I'm waiting.
I guess
where she fed one of the slave masters to her dragons in the last season after Barristan died on the show.
don't know. I don't know why, but that just didn't like. I don't know. Probably it was the music wasn't right and the lighting, but it's just that scene from, I can't remember what season it was. Probably like season 4 or 3, but that scene was everything for me, and I'm just waiting for another one.
That was season 3, episode 4, and it was
one.
the best episode of season 3.
Yeah.
Season. I might say episode 5 was the best one for me, but of that season maybe. But that's neither here nor there. So do we have anything else maybe on the Danny scene here in this episode?
Or if anyone has, I guess, where you see the storyline going, or what you think will happen next episode.
I feel like they'll just go to Vassals. She'll be proclaimed like Khaleesi for like real, and then they'll proceed from there either back to Marine or to Westeros.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next episode is called Home, isn't it? So.
Oh, have they announced what all the episodes are called for this season?
I think the first 3 episode titles were released, and the first one was The Red Woman, obviously. The second one is called Home, and the third one is called Oathbreaker.
Oh.
Is that the one where Brienne kills Sansa? Or...
Oh my god.
Maybe Sansa kills Brienne, huh? But that wouldn't make sense.
Just across all the storylines, just oaths being broken, just...
Yeah,
Thomas being like, you know what, screw it, Melisandre, I'm in love with you. Just all across the board, just everybody just doing a 180.
But linked to the storyline of Daenerys, you have Jorah and Dario searching for Daenerys. And also you have like 2 scenes together, so you have Dario and Jorah, and then you also have Varys and Tyrion as well, like side by side until you get to the Daenerys scene.
And I guess the only thing that, I mean, I know that this Lord of the Rings joke has been made a lot, when they say, oh, the leaves of Lothlorien and that sort of thing, like, Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli following the 2 hobbits, basically, where they sort of pick up this breadcrumb on the road. But I guess, they were sort of drawn to the fact that there was a big circle around a grassy center, and so yeah, and when Jorah sort of looks around in the inside the circle, he probably finds the ring that she dropped last time. So yeah, I mean, to me it's not really that outlandish that he might find it if he thought that something was strange about that circle that they rode around.
Do you think Jorah is going to give Dario grayscale by just like running his arm over his like clothing while he's sleeping or something?
That somehow this image seems kind of strangely funny. Like he's just going to rub his arm all over his back or whatever, like while he's sleeping or something. It's really, really strange. Like
Jorah and Dario make a deep friendship, and then Jorah confesses to Dario what's happening and like tell him that he has grayscale. Then they try and find a cure together.
Yeah, because
this will be its own TV show.
But so we definitely know that Jorah is going to be the John Connington of the show, right?
Oh, I never thought on that, but yeah, that makes sense. So
definitely a weird friendship. I do like watching them interact together, though. Like Jorah and Dario, there's potential for good things. Like their detective story is thin and nothing, but Game of Thrones' strong point has always just been like watching people interact with each other and hearing the conversations that come from it.
And so, where do we stand on Jorah on the show? Like, I know that recently there was a thread on the forum where people were asking, if his portrayal on the show has sort of changed your opinion on the book character or anything. Like, has that happened? I mean, to me, it's always been like, yeah, book Jorah is gross and show Jorah is, still gross, but less so.
I mean, Ian Glen is significantly more handsome than what
Yeah.
they talk of the description of Jorah being, so it's kind of hard to feel the same way.
So, yeah, I mean, to me, it's always just like, I mean, the idea that a man as old as Jorah would think that, that there was a viable relationship with a much younger girl like Daenerys was always a bit, I don't know, it always was a bit problematic for me in the books, to be honest.
It's a little problematic, but there's definitely stranger age gaps. It's just the complete lack of attraction on her part that makes it weirder and creepier on my mind.
Yeah, he's like the nice guy who doesn't understand that she's not really into him, right? That's the thing.
So I guess it's sort of like Dario is the cocky guy because he's like slept with Daenerys, and then he's like saying, "How does it feel to, be attracted to someone who'll never like you back?" So, sort of a snide comment to make.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically. I mean, he's observant. Like he knows what's up with Jorah essentially, and so he's kind of rubbing it in his face whenever he can because Dario is just an arrogant prick. But yeah, I mean, would be interesting to see. Like, I have sort of my suspicion about who the Harpy is, and I think one of the suspects to me is Dario, actually.
He is everyone, so it makes sense.
No, I mean, it's because he was fighting for the Yunkish, so he was fighting for slave owners before he joined Dany, and so he was always like either, he was either absent when something was happening with the Harpies, or when he was there, he was not getting harmed in any way. So I feel like there's definitely something there. Like, he was talking about killing all the other slaveholding families and that sort of thing, like the masters and that sort of thing. He seems like a shady guy, is what I'm saying.
I guess in the show they do need a real character to actually be the Harpy, whereas in the books it could be more general, but show watchers kind of need one particular character to pin it to rather than just an amorphous group. So I could see it, yeah.
Like you were talking about, if Jorah would infect Dario, so maybe not Dario, but do you think he might pass it on to someone else, another character? Like
Dany?
Maybe, perhaps. That's tougher, because I think in the books, Jon Con is definitely going to pass it on to either Arianne or to Aegon or to someone else in that camp, or to all of Dorne. But in the show, it's tougher because Daenerys is way more of a central and important character, at least it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind getting a main character, catch Grayscale or whatever, and sort of being on the clock essentially as to what they can do. And so Connington in the books has always felt to me like reckless and desperate, in a sense that he's just trying to get this last big thing done that he wants, and then he's willing to give it up, to die essentially. And I think Jorah on the show is much more in the same vein, but he's willing to die for a different cause than Connington in the books. So I would say that it might be that he passes Grayscale on into Dany when they meet again, right? Because if it's spreading on his arm, at some point there's not going to be a point where he can avoid infecting people, right?
Before being semi-converted to your Dario is the Harpy theory. I kind of suspected that Dario would just get Grayscale from Jorah, but then he would do the responsible thing and isolate himself or go kill himself or whatever, as opposed to Jorah's selfish drive.
Do you think that Dario is that? Is he that pragmatic that he would essentially say, "Well, fine, I got a deadly disease now. Now it's fine for you to have me killed or whatever." Or to isolate me, or
in the show, he seems like more of a good person, but that might just be illusion too.
Yeah, to me, the idea on the show for Dario has always been he makes suggestions that seem okay, because he's making these suggestions in a way that's rather quiet and level-headed and that sort of thing. But when he says gather all the masters and at a feast and kill them all. That's essentially, a red wedding in Marine, essentially, right? That's basically that kind of idea that we know, like, we hate a guy like Walder Frey for doing that kind of thing. And so when Dario suggests that in the books, at least it becomes clear to Dany that he's not the guy that she thinks he was. And so I wonder if in the show there will be a moment where that also happens, where she sort of realizes that this guy is probably not the guy that she should listen to.
I kind of got the vibe that they had changed him, so he wasn't that. So he needed to get out of the picture some other way.
Mm. I mean, at some point they have to resolve that kind of triangle between Dany, Dario, and Jorah on the show, right? In some fashion, it has to come to a head.
Then on the next to that scene so it's like a double act. So Dario and Jorah. Then you've got a scene with Tyrion and Varys. So was this a funny moment for everyone, like the comic relief of the episode, where the woman on the street thinks that Tyrion wants to eat her baby,
Oh my
but
gosh.
she actually just wants to give her money to like buy something to feed her baby.
Oh, I love those two together.
Not that they would do this on the show because it kind of violates his character and the spirit of it, but my brain did just make me wish that Tyrion would turn to Varys after and correct him and be like, no, I actually do want the baby. Don't tell me.
Oh my gosh.
I did really appreciate too the kind of claustrophobia of like people watching them from behind stuff, and like the way it was filmed was nice.
Yeah, that was very, very interesting.
And that it was a very short scene, but the scene ends with like their entire fleet being burned. So then they're stranded where they are.
What do you guys think about like the Red Priest preaching? Do you think like they're tied with the Harpy, or are they two separate factions, or do you feel like they're kind of lumping what happens in Volantis into Marine now? Like,
Yeah, they are kind of lumping the whole that kind of Slavers Bay kind of storyline. But I did like the fact that the Red Priest was kind of preaching. He was like, oh, take matters into your own hands, like Queen Daenerys came and saved you, but like you're not going to wait around to save yourself. And I was watching that like, oh my gosh, yes, like, yeah, be independent. And then kind of brought down by Tyrion being like, oh, that's going to be a problem, which then reminded me, oh yeah, we have to like keep them loyal to Daenerys. But I think that could be a way in which they could tie the kind of Volantis kind of storyline from the books, in the sense that there will be trouble for Daenerys when or if she comes back.
I definitely kind of feel like Tyrion thinking that is in line with his book character too, and that's kind of why I have to confess I hate him as a book character. He definitely like status quo and like is super selfish and definitely stands in backs of all the people who are like hierarchically below him. Sometimes in very cool ways too in the books.
People are going to come after you now. You said that.
I'm okay with it. I'm just they have my back.
But yeah, I guess I think I did notice that in Tyrion in the books, especially in the later books. I guess for me, especially with Penny, just I started not to like him.
Yeah, doesn't he at one point just think about murdering her? Like it's grotesque.
Yeah.
It does kind of strike me as weird though that if they want like these invaders to leave the city, why would they burn the ships? Or is the ship burning? Like the Freedmen faction who want to keep Daenerys and her like, or at least a retinue there to be able to try to control things. So what happened in Astapor doesn't happen in Reign. I don't know. It just didn't really make sense to me to burn their exit route.
It makes me wonder where they're gonna eventually get their ships from, because Dothraki don't do ships; they don't do water. So what's gonna happen?
I suppose that's where the Iron Islands comes in, and what'll happen later in the season, maybe if.
Oh. Yeah. That's gonna happen now, isn't it? Yeah.
So who enjoyed the scene with Arya where she gets beat up by the waif with the stick, and then she does her disappearing act as well?
It just reminded me so much of Daredevil, and then it just it just made me laugh, the amount of memes on Twitter about like her training and just like Daredevil. So it made me laugh.
It reminded me of something, but it wasn't Daredevil, but I'm sure I've seen something similar. Oh, it might have been Kill Bill. So the training scene in Kill Bill.
It definitely could have used like a montage, like all of those 80s, like become a hero movies sort of thing. But
definitely. That's probably where we've seen it. So like all those 80s movies that have like training scenes and like the misfit that becomes like the superhero by the end. That's why it felt so familiar. And that's probably where the storyline with Arya is going. So of course she's blind for now, and we know that she'll regain her sight eventually. But I guess it depends on the route that the TV show takes with that.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll do the cat thing.
Yeah, I was shocked to see that she wasn't. Well, I mean, I don't know because it was only the first episode, but she wasn't kind of still, in a sense, affiliated with the Faceless Men, because it kind of looked like she was kind of on her own for that beginning, and she was really surprised to kind of hear the waif, and kind of she was surprised that she was like, she was like, I thought like you guys were done with me, I'm blind now, like, so yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't figured that. I just kind of assumed that she was still with them, but like on field trip or whatever they do for the day. I can't remember, in the last season, was one of the faces that, when they were pulling off all the faces in the House of Black, was one of them Sirius? I can't remember.
I think that it was Jack and Hagar, not Sirio.
Yeah, like they went through a series of faces. I just couldn't remember if one was Sirio.
Oh, that's something I wanted to ask. You know, have you all seen the poster for Game of Thrones, like the main poster where it's like the House of Faces and the House of Masks? Is that supposed to be like the main character's face, or is it just like random people?
I think it was just anyone who's died. I kind of thought that was like a weird design failure because a lot of people couldn't even tell who the faces were or like what was happening with it.
I recognised one and it looked like Tyrion, but then I seen another one and it looked like Robert Baratheon.
Yeah, there was like Rob and like Oberyn and like Caitlyn and like anyone who's like died in the series was in there pretty much.
Yeah.
But even like looking online for it, it was kind of like no one online could really tell who was who. It seemed just kind of like a failure of a marketing plan.
In terms of posters, which has been your favourite so far? So of the 6 seasons, so like season 2 with the crown, for the Clash of Kings, like book cover, the one where it's Ned on the throne, the one where season 3, I think that was the grey background with the 3 swords, as in like tally mark 3, and like a dragon shadow in the background.
I just have to like look them all up because I can't remember them.
I would say it's the second. Season 2 was the best, for the crown that you see with the black background.
Oh.
I definitely don't recall at all what most of them look like. I don't know. I really do appreciate the trailers though. Sometimes I feel like they're honestly better than the show itself, just because you can move like all these awesome sound.
And it hypes you up. It gives you that ammunition. You know that you can't until it starts.
I will say, I think I think it was the season 5's one with the dragon, and that, I think that one for me was the one where I got like really excited because I was like, oh my gosh, is he gonna see the dragon? Because I kind of took it as the person in that poster is Tyrion. Like, when I saw that poster, I was incredibly hyped for season 5, and then my dreams were shot down. But yeah.
But I know what you mean, David. So the poster for this season is a bit of a letdown. It doesn't build up that hype like season 5 or the season 2 poster did for me.
Yeah, it's not even really clear or legible, which is kind of filler when you're thinking about like marketing. You want things to be able to be recognized. You want like it to spark discussion more than just like what is this kind of thing.
But the final scene we haven't discussed yet. So Cersei is told by a maidservant, and by the way, I thought it was Marjorie. Did anyone else think that?
Yeah.
But then if that doesn't make sense because Cersei hates Marjorie, but it's a maidservant that tells her that a ship is docking, so she thinks that Marcella is back home, Jamie, so she rushes to see it, and then the way that Jamie looks at her, she can tell that something's wrong, or Marcella is dead, and then...
I thought the little shroud of the castle in the background.
Was her like shroud gold as well when she was coming up in the boat?
Yeah, it definitely was.
I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, yep, the shroud gold.
You know, it might have just been the time of day, so like 3 a.m. or like 2:30 or so, but I was just like not alert enough to notice that. So I just thought it was just like the look from Jane, because they're so entwined, that she just got a sense of what was happening, and she just knew that it was the death of her daughter.
I just loved how that she was so excited. She like ran to the dock or the harbour or whatever, and then I just love how the camera just kind of, it just stayed in her face, and you could see the emotion of, oh my gosh, she's here, and then she was kind of like, oh, where is she? And then it kind of, it sunk in, and it was, I really, really, really liked that.
Lena Headey's definitely a great actress.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think the whole time, though, about just how grotesque that must smell. Like, the reason I noticed the gold shroud is because I was going to look and see if they had done anything to preserve Marcella, like put her in like a cask of rum or something. Like,
oh my gosh.
I can't help but look for those things.
Yeah.
Well, what surprised me is the fact that she wasn't angry with Jamie, so when they had that scene together, because in the show canon, so Jamie has been present for Joffrey's death, and he's now been present for Marcella's death, so I can sort of see the logic of Cersei thinking, well, he was there, but he didn't do anything to protect my children, so I'm surprised that she didn't say anything like that.
Yeah, I'm surprised she immediately went to, I knew this was going to happen, it was the prophecy. I was kind of expecting her to be angry with Jamie.
I was kind of more taken aback at Jamie's reaction, just because of, at least, I mean, I know it's dangerous to compare too much books to show, but at least in the books, he's definitely on more of like a weird redemptive arc. But then in this, it seems like he's doubling down for defending family and not caring about anything else, like actually to the extent of saying like it's us against everyone sort of thing. That to me was even more surprising.
And I was thinking last night about, so they referenced the prophecy from Maggie the Frog, and I couldn't remember what happened, because there was like parts of that were cut out from the book, like compared to what we know from the book for the show, and I couldn't remember if they mentioned the kids dying, so I was sort of thinking, is this how we learn more about what happened at the prophecy? So that was just like a snippet of what happened, and we'll learn more through the show. But then I watched season 5, episode 1 today and realised, they did mention that part about the kids dying. It's just they didn't mention the Valonqar prophecy.
I wonder why they didn't mention the Valonqar.
I was just thinking maybe they'll change it in the show where it's not the Valonqar who kills her, it's someone else or something.
Oh.
Part of me does hope that it will be introduced later, or they'll do another flashback to that prophecy and we'll see more of it, but maybe it's too late now.
just the second half of the prophecy, like the first one cut out partway through, and then you get the addendum later. What do y'all think Marjorie's going to do now, though? Like, do you think she's going to confess, or do you think High Septon, or the High Sparrow, I guess, is actually going to play power politics with her, or like, what do you figure she's going to end up doing?
I mean, I got the sense that the High Sparrow is kind of like, he's like, I know you're never going to confess to what we're accusing you of, so you might as well just confess to something so that, we can show people that, that you will be punished. He's just kind of like, I feel like he's kind of hinting at her, like, if you don't want, Septa Unella to hit you with a book, then just confess to something, just anything.
What do you think she'll actually confess to?
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what she kind of says. I was trying to think about what she could say, and I couldn't think of anything.
Yeah,
do you think we'll see the torture scene Loras? Or maybe it's... So I'm thinking if we have seen Marjorie and we've seen Cersei, so maybe they won't show Loras, because that's like free of three characters going through the similar scenes.
Oh, it just occurred to me that maybe they'll get Dolores under the bus and confess about him, which would be slightly out of character. But
Yeah, that is a thing, I guess, in the sense that it would be out of character for Marjorie in the books, but who knows what Dan and Dave could decide for her to do in the show. So that could possibly be an interesting, set of events.
So now that we have Joffrey and Marcella dead, do we think that Tommen might die this season, or will they hold that back until next season?
I feel like they might hold that back until Daenerys is coming over, because there's not really anyone to replace him, and they can just have. It wouldn't make for compelling TV just to have like that power vacuum or like characters no one knows hanging out.
Yeah.
So maybe at the end of the season, if Daenerys over at the start of next season, or at the start of next season, if Daenerys is coming midway through, or I'm not sure.
Oh, I do have a question about that. So, we'll start with you, David. Do you think that right now, the way that the show has been discussed, it has been, like, the talks are that it'll be 7 seasons and that'll be it? But do you think they'll stretch further, or do you think they'll maybe stick to that 7 seasons?
I could see them sticking to the 7 seasons, because I get the vibe. I was saying it on the Dragon Cast preview that David and Dan just kind of seemed tired and like over it. So I could see them kind of wanting to wrap it up. But it wouldn't surprise me also if they branch off and do like side stories as extended things that just explore them more to cash in.
When they did start off with the series, they always wanted to get so far that they could cover the Red Wedding, and then the show just became more and more popular as it went. So I guess right now it seems like it's pressure to keep going, since it's the largest show on HBO, and
Definitely. I don't know.
Like a big show on Sky Atlantic as well.
I don't know how long they'll be able to carry that on for, because like even just seeing the things that they write compared to the things that they mine from books, it's not really a strong material. Like look at the whole Dorne subplot; it's all kind of fading around. I don't know how much they can keep juggling these plates without like them kind of starting to lose the audience in like a True Blood sort of way.
And what do you think, Claire, about the show's longevity?
I had I don't know how reliable this is, but I had the understanding that it was going around YouTube that the show was actually going to go up to season 8, but that season 8 would be very short, and like in terms of like 5 episodes of literally just the very end of the series, or A Song of Ice and Fire, and done by the show. So I guess it would kind of make sense for that, because I feel like we're just at the beginning of season 6 now, and there's I can't see it in like 9 more episodes of us being in a place where season 7 would be the end.
In fact, I think I did read about that something about like splitting the season into 2, and season 8 would be part 2 of season 7, really.
Yeah.
Oh, that seems just like a way to cheat out of it and get 8 seasons like you're called.
Like they did with Mad Men.
Oh, did they do that?
Yeah. Yeah, they had season 2 was split into, so season 7 was 14 episodes, and I think they did 8 episodes and then broke it up for a year and it returned, and that was episodes 9 to 14.
Yeah, I could see them totally doing that, especially if there's precedent.
I guess there are a lot of meetings in the background, so big board meetings about how long to string along the show. Does anyone think if it's got anything to do with, well, in fact, it must have, so the fact that they're relying on their own writing talent now and not published material, that might have something to do with it, that they no longer have the storyline dictated by the books. They have the outline of what George R.R. Martin has told them, and they're relying on that to base the storyline.
I kind of suspect they've just got a vague endpoint, and they're going to scribble in like the middle between here and there.
Yeah, and I feel like, especially since Dan and Dave kind of, they are in an essence fans of the books, but the books are the reason that, they wanted to bring Game of Thrones to television. So I guess in a sense, like you said before, like I guess they are tired. And I guess it is, in a sense, they realize that, you know, it's going to get to a point where, even though like the book readers aren't like a main majority of the people who purely watch Game of Thrones, I feel like there is that kind of sense of a fear of probably just screwing up the story so badly. Like, even though they will get to the point where, you know, like George R. R. Martin gave them this kind of vague point of how it would end. Like, I guess maybe they do feel that fear of like they might screw up the story. I don't know.
I don't even know if they necessarily care about screwing up the story. I feel like they're just afraid that people will they'll start losing viewers when it's just not as like consistent or good.
Yeah.
Well, I guess time will tell based on how well it does this season. How have your friends thought the show, or the first episode anyway?
I have friends who are still
If you've had
kind of catching up on season 3, so I have to wait for them. They don't have my capability for binge watching, so they kind of take it one episode at a time. So I can wait.
I can sort of appreciate that, because sometimes shows come along and they're like so massive that it's daunting to give them a chance, because you think, well, I need to spend, well, that's already on its 5th season, 6th season, so it's sort of like, for me, The Walking Dead. Like, I hear so many people say how amazing that show is, but to actually start it is like such a daunting prospect.
Yeah, that's how I feel with The Walking Dead as
and
well.
Really time consuming as well.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And like the first season is not, and that's where I fell off. People say the later seasons are good, but the first one is horrible. So you got to slog through that to begin with. It just seems like too much work. With The Walking Dead, I mean.
Yeah.
Well, Claire, will you be staying up to 2 next Sunday night for episode 2? Because I think it's a weird thing. So last year they didn't have a simulcast for the first episode, but they did for every other episode. And then season 4 of Game of Thrones, they started with a simulcast, but the rest of the season they didn't. So I'm hoping this season, I think anyway, so for Sky Atlantic it will be simulcast all the way through.
Oh, I hope so, because that would just be, it would be so odd to kind of start and then stop.
Is that where it's just broadcast at the same time as all over, kind of?
As America, as HBO. But the official airtime, so they do a simulcast for 2 a.m, but it's actually right now, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. That's officially when it goes out on Sky Atlantic.
Yeah, on the Monday.
Yes.
Oh, so they broadcast it twice?
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
So the first 3 seasons they just had it on the Monday, so one day after America, so 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. on the Mondays, and then season 4, that's when they started to broadcast it at the same time as America.
Gotcha.
I'm just I guess it's not really kind of a prediction, but I think more than anything I'm interested to see what happens at the Wall next episode.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm really salivating for in the books too, just the aftermath to see that.
And will Melisandre's secret be like something that us as viewers know and no one else knows, or do you think anyone will discover her identity?
It's just like Davos walking in on her like, oh, sorry.
I could definitely see that, but Davos seems like the type to hold it close though too. I'm really interested to see what happens with like Winterfell, and whether what parts the Umbers and the Wildlings and like Sansa and Brienne and all these other factions kind of play into it.
And I'm really interested in what will happen with Cersei, Daenerys, and the storyline with Arya. So much like how I feel about the books, so those are the characters that I care about the most in the book storylines.
I'm also kind of sitting on the sidelines with my popcorn waiting for like whatever egregious atrocity they do, or like the controversy for this year, just to watch that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so the so you didn't watch season 5, David, but I'm guessing you heard about the Sansa thing that happened last year.
Yeah, like I listened to like Wolfcast, Dragoncast.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So like I knew everything that's why I kind of feel like I haven't like physically watched it, but I've less watched it.
Well, in those episodes where you listened to the podcasts or other podcasts, did you read about them online or news reports?
Not really. Mostly just from like people from the fandom kind of thing. I watched like clips of a couple things happening on YouTube just because I was curious to see. But that's about it. So like I watched like Stannis's like quote unquote death just to see because there was stuff like that. Which I mean he could still definitely come back. Like they say like he's dead, but that's not really confirmation. It's just more people talking. The dream lives.
I have no idea what's happened to Matthieu, but thanks again, Matthieu, for joining us on this discussion as well, if you're out there. And thank you to everyone as well. So and thanks for everyone for listening.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for hosting.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.